I greeted a deaf visitor in sign language. I had no idea the CEO was watching me. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. The end. Don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone. I never imagined a simple greeting could change everything. That morning, I woke up with the sun peeking softly through my curtains, casting a warm glow across my small apartment. The city outside was alive with its usual chaos, horns blaring, people rushing, but for a moment it felt peaceful. I brewed my coffee, sat by the window, and let the steam curl around my face, trying to enjoy the quiet before the day swallowed me whole. Life had been ordinary, almost painfully so. Filled with work emails, mundane routines, and the constant hum of everyone else's expectations. But there was something in me that morning. A small, restless curiosity that told me this day would be different, even though I had no idea how much it would change me. I grabbed my bag, my notebook tucked inside, and stepped out into the bustling street. The air was crisp, carrying a faint scent of rain from the night before. And as I walked, I noticed a figure waiting near the entrance of the office building I worked at. She was leaning slightly, scanning the crowd, her hands trembling just a little. At first I thought she was nervous for a job interview, but then I realized her eyes weren't focused on the people passing by. They were searching for someone, for something. My heart skipped. Something about her made me pause. Without thinking, I approached her. I smiled and waved, but she didn't respond. Then, almost instinctively, I raised my hands and started signing the words I had learned years ago in a brief course at college. "Hello, can I help you?" My hands moved smoothly, almost automatically, and I saw her eyes widen with surprise. She responded with a hesitant smile, signing back. And in that moment, a strange warmth washed over me. It felt like a small bridge had been built between us, a silent acknowledgement that someone had seen her, really seen her. But then, I felt a chill crawling up my spine, a subtle shift in the air, like the world had decided to hold its breath. I didn't notice him at first. He was standing a few steps behind me, watching. The way he moved, the way his eyes narrowed slightly, it was hard to tell if he was impressed or irritated. But there was an intensity there, a weight that made my stomach twist into knots. My hands faltered mid-sign, and the woman looked at me with a brief flicker of concern. I felt my cheeks heat up, a knot forming in my throat. Why did this stranger feel so imposing? My heart raced, but I forced myself to keep communicating, to finish what I had started. As I guided her into the building, helping with doors and making sure she could find the elevator, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The woman laughed softly, a sound like music in the quiet hallway, and I felt a sense of relief. Maybe the fear was just my imagination. Maybe today would be nothing more than a fleeting moment of kindness. And yet, the intensity of his gaze never left me. He followed silently, making no move, but his presence pressed down on me, heavier than I had expected. My mind raced. Was he evaluating me? Judging me? Or was there something worse I couldn't see yet? We reached the reception, and she signed a few words of gratitude. Her fingers moved gracefully, expressing a depth of feeling that words could never capture. I smiled, trying to hide my growing anxiety. Then it happened. The man stepped forward. His voice, when it came, was calm. Almost too calm, and it made my pulse spike. "Very impressive," he said. "Not many people take the time to notice someone like that." I froze. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. There was a power in his tone, a subtle command that made me instinctively step back. And then, almost as if the world had slowed, I realized I had just greeted a visitor, in sign language, and the CEO of the company had been watching every single movement. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. My hands were still trembling slightly, and I couldn't force a smile that felt genuine. The woman looked at me, her expression warm and trusting, unaware of the storm that had just quietly descended around us. I wanted to run, to hide, to disappear somewhere nobody could see the panic rising in my chest. But I couldn't. I had to face him. I had to keep moving, keep breathing, keep pretending that this was ordinary, when in fact nothing about this was ordinary anymore. We parted ways, the woman heading to her appointment, and I watched her disappear down the hallway. My mind was spinning with thoughts, questions, and a creeping dread I couldn't name. He approached slowly, each step deliberate, and I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on me. My instincts screamed at me, warning me that this encounter would define something, maybe everything. I tried to calm my breathing, tried to remind myself that I had only done a kind thing, that I hadn't broken any rules, hurt anyone, or made a mistake. And yet, the tension in his gaze told me otherwise. He stopped in front of me, tall, imposing, yet not unkind. "You have a rare talent," he said softly, and not just in sign language. My head tilted slightly, confusion and curiosity mingling. My pulse quickened. What did he mean? What had he seen? My chest tightened, and for a fleeting moment, I felt exposed. Like he could see every thought, every fear, every hesitation inside me. But before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart racing, my mind spinning. I leaned against the wall for support, trying to collect myself. The morning sun still poured in through the windows, ordinary and beautiful, and yet the day felt entirely different. Something had shifted, though I couldn't yet name it. I had performed a simple act of kindness, and it had set off a chain of events I couldn't control. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I could feel it in every nerve of my body, my life. The kind I had always known was about to change forever. I barely noticed the office buzzing around me as I walked toward my desk, my hands still shaking slightly from the encounter. The clatter of keyboards, the murmur of voices, the occasional laugh, it all felt distant, like I was underwater, only aware of the pounding of my own heart. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I'd just been watched by the CEO and it didn't mean anything, but my chest tightened each time I replayed his words in my mind. "You have a rare talent," and not just in sign language. What did that even mean? Talent? Recognition? Or something far more complicated? I tried to settle in, opening my laptop and scrolling through emails, but every message felt meaningless. My thoughts kept drifting back to the visitor, to the fleeting connection we had shared, to the way her eyes had lit up when I greeted her in sign language. A small act of kindness, a gesture that should have been ordinary, and somehow it had drawn attention I wasn't prepared for. I glanced around, half expecting him to appear again, to somehow emerge from the shadows of the office, observing everything I did. My pulse raced at the thought. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. I couldn't tell. The day blurred as I tried to focus on work, but the tension in my chest refused to ease. Then, during a short break, I decided to step outside for some air. The corridor outside was quiet, the hum of the building fading behind me. I leaned against the wall, my mind racing. That small interaction earlier had left me unsettled, yes, but also strangely alive, as if something new and unpredictable had been set in motion. And I couldn't ignore the feeling that this was bigger than just a simple act of courtesy. The next part of the day arrived faster than I expected. There was a sudden announcement over the intercom, a request for me to come to the executive floor. My stomach dropped. My hands clutched my bag, and I felt a surge of fear and anticipation swirling inside me. Why me? Was this about the visitor? Was it about the CEO? My mind spun with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. I tried to remind myself to breathe, to stay calm. But my pulse thudded violently in my ears. As I rode the elevator up, my reflection in the polished metal doors stared back at me. I barely recognized the anxious expression, the wide eyes, the trembling hands. My thoughts raced back to the woman I had helped, to her trusting smile. And I couldn't help but wonder, was this what it felt like when a small action rippled into something monumental? The elevator dinged, doors sliding open to a hallway that seemed impossibly long, impossibly intimidating. I stepped out, each footfall echoing like a countdown in my ears. He was there, waiting. The CEO. Calm, composed, and impossibly tall, as if the very air around him had shifted to mark his presence. I swallowed hard, feeling every ounce of my courage shrink into a trembling knot in my stomach. He gestured for me to come closer. "Alec," he said, his voice smooth, commanding attention without shouting. "I watched what you did this morning." My throat went dry. I nodded, unsure if I should speak, if words even mattered right now. "You have a rare gift," he continued, his eyes studying me carefully. "Not just in sign language, but in noticing people, in seeing them, in doing something no one else bothers to do." My mind reeled. Was this praise? A warning? The way he looked at me made it impossible to tell. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if he could see every doubt, every fear, every insecurity I had tucked away in the corners of my mind. And yet, there was something else too. Something that whispered possibility, that hinted that maybe this moment could change everything. I struggled to find words to express my gratitude, my shock, my fear, all at once. I felt the weight of the building, the people, the walls, the very air around me pressing down, making it impossible to breathe normally. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, he smiled a small, deliberate smile, sharp and knowing. "I want you to come work with me directly," he said. "There are things happening here, things most people don't notice, that I need someone like you to help with." My heart raced so fast I thought it would burst. What did he mean? Why me? Was this an honor, a trap, or something far stranger I couldn't yet comprehend? I left the office that day feeling a mixture of exhilaration and fear. The streets outside seemed brighter, louder, sharper. Every passerby, every horn, every flicker of light felt amplified, like my senses had been switched on in a way I hadn't known was possible. I kept thinking about the woman, the simple act that had triggered this chain of events. It terrified me to consider how one small gesture could have such a ripple effect, and yet I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. I had done nothing extraordinary, and yet everything had changed. That evening, I sat at my window, looking out at the city skyline, the lights twinkling like 1,000 tiny stars. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hesitation curled in my stomach as I opened it. "Meet me tomorrow. There's something you need to see." My hands trembled. Was this related to the CEO? Was it dangerous? I couldn't be sure. I reread the message over and over, the words echoing in my mind. Something told me that tomorrow would bring answers or more questions, sharper and more shocking than I could imagine. I leaned back, my mind spinning with anticipation and dread. I tried to imagine what was coming, to prepare myself, but there was no way. Every instinct screamed that I was about to be pulled into a situation far beyond my understanding, one that could change my life forever. And yet, beneath the fear, there was a flicker of determination. I had faced moments of uncertainty before, but never like this. Never with so much at stake, never with the world watching, even if it didn't know it yet. I went to bed that night with my thoughts racing, my heart pounding, the city below alive and indifferent to the storm gathering inside me. Sleep came fitfully, shadows stretching across the walls, turning familiar shapes into unknown threats. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my life, about the world around me, about myself, was about to be tested in ways I had never imagined. And as I drifted in and out of consciousness, one question lingered in my mind, sharp and persistent. Could a single act of kindness really lead to something life-altering? Or was it only the beginning of a path I wasn't ready to walk? The next morning, I woke before my alarm, heart pounding as if it had already sensed the tension waiting for me. The city outside my window looked ordinary, but to me, it felt charged, as though every sound, every movement was amplified. I dressed quickly, my hands still trembling from the message the night before. I didn't know who had sent it, and that uncertainty was like a tight knot in my chest. What was I walking into? I tried to steady my breathing, to remind myself that I had faced uncertainty before, but nothing had ever felt like this. As I stepped into the street, the cool air hit my face, and I felt both exposed and alive. The streets were crowded with people rushing to their destinations, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another message to appear, to guide me, to warn me. Nothing. Just the silence, heavy and foreboding. I had no idea where I was going, who I would meet, or what I would face. And yet, every step I took carried the weight of inevitability, a sense that I could not turn back now. I arrived at the address in the message, a sleek office building that gleamed in the morning sun. Its glass doors reflected my anxious face, and for a moment, I stared at myself, questioning if I was ready. I reminded myself of the visitor, of the smile, of the small act that had brought me here. Somehow, that tiny gesture, so ordinary and human, had triggered all of this. My heart tightened with both fear and a strange thrill. I pushed open the doors and stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the marble lobby, each one louder than the last. A man appeared almost immediately, sharply dressed, his posture rigid but not unkind. "Alec Rose?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was an edge that made my stomach twist. I nodded, unsure if I should speak. He gestured for me to follow, and I obeyed, the echo of my own footsteps mingling with the quiet hum of the elevators and the faint click of polished shoes on marble floors. Every instinct screamed caution, but something inside me pushed me forward. I had to know. I had to see what this was about. We reached a room at the end of a long hallway. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear voices inside, though I couldn't make out the words. I hesitated, a flicker of doubt coursing through me. What if this was a mistake? What if I was walking into something I couldn't control? But the man nudged me gently forward, and I entered. Inside, the space was warm and modern, yet intimidating. At the center of the room, seated behind a large desk, was the CEO. He looked up as I entered, his eyes sharp, calculating, but with something softer underneath that I could barely see. My stomach knotted, and I realized I was shaking again. He gestured for me to sit, and I obeyed, feeling the weight of his gaze pin me to the chair. "Alec," he said, his voice calm. "What you did yesterday, it wasn't just noticed, it mattered. More than you know." My mind spun. I tried to respond, but my throat felt tight. Words caught somewhere between fear, disbelief, and awe. He leaned back, studying me. "We have situations here," he continued, "things that people overlook, injustices that quietly unfold every day. Most employees don't see them, or they choose not to. But you notice. You act. That's rare." The room seemed to shrink around me, every word hitting like a drumbeat against my chest. I felt both honored and terrified. What kind of situations? What injustices? I wanted to ask, but something in his tone told me to listen first, to absorb before speaking. He continued, "There's a project, a challenge, and I need someone who can act with empathy, with awareness, and with courage. I need someone like you." My mind raced. Me? Courage? I was just a woman trying to help someone who couldn't hear. And yet, the intensity of his gaze, the gravity of his words, made it impossible to deny that this was serious. My hands trembled in my lap as I tried to make sense of it all. The fear of stepping into something unknown clashed with a strange surge of purpose. I realized that this could be an opportunity, yes, but also a test, and the stakes were higher than I could have imagined. He slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Read this," he said. My fingers grazed the papers, and I felt a jolt of curiosity mixed with anxiety. The folder contained cases, reports, notes about people who had been overlooked, mistreated, or dismissed, quiet stories of injustice that nobody had bothered to acknowledge. I skimmed the first page and felt a tightness in my chest. These weren't abstract problems. These were real people, real lives, real suffering. And suddenly, I understood why he had watched me yesterday. He needed someone who could see these moments, someone willing to act when others would look away. The weight of responsibility settled on me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and grounding all at once. My mind flashed to the visitor, to the small smile, to the simple act of acknowledgement that had set this chain of events in motion. Could one small gesture really make a difference in a world so indifferent? The answer, terrifying as it was, seemed to be yes. And somehow, that realization gave me a spark of courage I hadn't known I possessed. Before I could respond, the CEO leaned forward, his expression unreadable but intense. "I'm giving you a choice, Alatik. You can walk away. Go back to your ordinary life, or you can step into this, knowing that it will challenge you, frighten you, and demand more than you think you have. But you will matter. Your actions will matter." My chest tightened. I thought of the visitor, of the moment that had brought me here, and my voice, small but steady, finally emerged. I want to help." His eyes softened just slightly, a shadow of a smile crossing his face. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow, we begin." The room seemed to shift, the tension lingering but transforming into something heavier, charged with expectation. I left that day with a strange mix of fear, anticipation, and determination, knowing that my life was about to be irreversibly changed. I had stepped into a world I didn't yet understand, and there was no turning back. As I walked through the city streets, the folder clutched in my hands, I realized that this wasn't just about the CEO, or the project, or even the small act of kindness I had shown. It was about seeing, truly seeing, the people around me, about standing up when others would stay silent. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the buildings, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. I was about to face challenges that would test everything I believed about myself, the world, and what it meant to act with courage in a place that often rewarded indifference. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual, my nerves coiling tightly around my chest like a living thing. The city outside felt quieter than normal, as if it, too, sensed what was coming. The folder from yesterday lay heavy in my bag, filled with stories that weren't just words on paper. They were lives, struggles, injustices. I didn't yet know the full weight of what I had agreed to, but a strange part of me trembled with anticipation. I was stepping into something far bigger than myself, and every instinct screamed that the world I thought I knew was about to shift. I was guided to a private office, the walls lined with books and framed photographs of people who seemed impossibly ordinary yet had accomplished extraordinary things. The CEO was there, seated behind his desk, calm as ever, but with a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Alec," he said, "today is different. Today, Stobe, you will see the truth of what's happening here, not through papers, not through reports, but in real time." My stomach tightened. Real time? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands. I wanted to ask questions, to prepare myself, but I had a creeping sense that this moment demanded courage, not preparation. He handed me a small earpiece and gestured toward the screen on the wall. I slipped it in, my fingers trembling, and suddenly I was watching, not reading, not imagining, but watching a person's life unfold through the cameras and feeds he had access to. At first, it seemed ordinary, mundane even. Then I saw her, a woman, clearly exhausted, trying to communicate in sign language to someone who didn't understand her, her gestures ignored, her presence dismissed. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. She reminded me of the visitor, her vulnerability, her courage, and I felt something stir deep inside me. Empathy, anger, and a fear I hadn't expected. "You see her?" the CEO asked softly. "Most people walk by. Most people don't notice. But you notice." I nodded, unable to speak. The weight of responsibility slammed into me. I realized in that moment that what I had agreed to wasn't a simple project, a small task. It was a call to act when the world was blind, when the ordinary ignored injustice, when silence became complicity. My pulse raced, my hands went clammy, but my mind sharpened. I had to do something. I couldn't let her struggle alone. Suddenly, the feeds shifted. Another person appeared, someone being shouted at, dismissed, humiliated by those in power, their voice ignored by everyone except the cameras capturing it all. The pain, frustration, helplessness, it was overwhelming. My chest felt tight, my stomach churned, and I felt tears welling up, blurring the images. I wanted to look away, to retreat, but I couldn't. I had been chosen because I could see, because I wouldn't turn away. The intensity of the moment left me raw, trembling with both fear and determination. The CEO watched me carefully, silent, letting the gravity sink in. Then he leaned forward. "You're going to intervene," he said, calm but firm. "You're going to see the world as it is and do something about it. And it won't be easy." My throat went dry. I nodded, though my mind screamed with doubt. Could I? Should I? Did I have the courage to step into situations so complex, so delicate, so full of unknown consequences? My heart thundered in my chest. I felt exposed, vulnerable, completely unprepared, and yet I knew I couldn't walk away now. The feeds continued, showing moments of injustice, neglect, and subtle cruelty that I had never noticed before. Each image struck me like a blow, and I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. I realized that all my life I had taken the ordinary for granted. The routine, the unnoticed kindnesses, the small gestures. But here, in front of me, was the world in its raw, unfiltered state. And for the first time, I understood that noticing wasn't enough. Seeing was meaningless unless action followed. Then came the moment I couldn't ignore. One person, small and alone, trapped in a room, trying desperately to communicate in sign language, her frustration palpable, her fear almost physical. My heart raced. My hands clenched into fists. This was no longer observation. This was intervention waiting to happen, and I was the one expected to step forward. I felt every beat of my heart echoing through my body, my mind screaming both warning and encouragement. One wrong move, and the consequences could be severe, but one right move, and maybe I could change something. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. My fingers itched to act, to reach out, to bridge the silence, to transform empathy into courage. The CEO's gaze locked onto mine, steady, unwavering, almost challenging me. I realized in that moment that the story wasn't about the cameras, the screens, or even him. It was about me, about noticing, about acting, about risking the ordinary to make the extraordinary possible. My chest tightened, fear and resolve warring in my mind, as I felt the weight of the choice pressing down, heavier than anything I had ever felt before. A sharp ping came through the earpiece in alert, a signal that the moment had arrived. I knew what I had to do, though the full scope of consequences remained unknown. My hands trembled, my breathing quickened, but a strange clarity cut through the fear. I had seen, I had understood, and now I had to step into the world I had only observed. And as I stood there, ready to act, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The outcome was out of my control. Everything I had ever known, every routine, every safety, every certainty, it had ended the moment I decided to truly see. And yet, in that moment of raw exposure, I felt alive in a way I had never experienced. The fear, the anticipation, the uncertainty, it all became fuel. I was about to do something that mattered, something real. And as the feeds displayed the struggle before me, I whispered silently to myself, my voice trembling but firm, "I see you, and I won't look away." After what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes, the tension began to ease. Just slightly, I had acted, stepped into the moments that demanded courage, and I had seen the immediate effects of noticing, of intervening, of choosing to act rather than stay silent. The woman in the room had finally been heard, her frustration met with understanding, her struggle acknowledged. I felt a weight lift from my chest, though it didn't disappear entirely. The reality of what I had just done, what I had just witnessed, pressed on me, heavy and unrelenting. The CEO approached, his usual calm demeanor softening, just enough to reveal a glimmer of approval. "You did well, Alec," he said. His words were simple, but they carried the gravity of everything I had feared and hoped for over the last 2 days. I nodded, my throat tight, my mind buzzing with everything I had experienced. He didn't need to say more. The acknowledgement, the validation was enough. Yet, even as I felt a momentary relief, I understood that this was just the beginning. Walking out of the building, the city felt different. The sunlight no longer simply touched the streets. It highlighted every corner, every shadow, every nuance I had overlooked before. People passed by, ordinary in their routines, oblivious to the ripple of change I had just felt within myself. I thought of the woman I had helped, the simple gestures that had set everything into motion, and I realized how fragile and precious these moments of connection truly were. One act, one decision, could create a chain reaction that affected more lives than I could ever imagine. That evening, I returned to my apartment exhausted but strangely exhilarated. My hands still trembled occasionally, not from fear this time, but from the sheer intensity of everything I had experienced. I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking out over the city, letting the weight of the day settle into a slow rhythm. I thought about all the stories I had witnessed, all the injustices that went unnoticed, and all the opportunities to act that were waiting silently, quietly, in plain sight. It was overwhelming, but it was also empowering. I thought about myself before this all began, the ordinary Alec, living a routine life, unaware of how much her own awareness could matter. I realized that courage wasn't about grand gestures or heroic acts. It was about noticing, choosing to act, and stepping forward even when the outcome was uncertain. I understood that my life had changed not because I was suddenly important, but because I had decided to engage with the world in a way I never had before. The ordinary had become extraordinary simply because I had chosen to see it. A knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find a small envelope slipped under the frame. Inside was a single note, written in neat handwriting. "You made a difference today. Don't stop." No signature, no further explanation. Just those simple words. I held the note close, feeling a warmth that contrasted sharply with the exhaustion in my limbs. Somehow, that small acknowledgement captured everything I had learned. The power of attention, of empathy, of taking action when no one else would. Days passed and I continued my work, navigating the projects, observing the struggles, stepping into the moments where I could intervene. Each time I felt the same mix of fear and exhilaration, knowing that what I did mattered, that my actions rippled outward in ways I could not fully see. I learned to trust my instincts, to listen closely, to notice carefully, and to act with both courage and compassion. The world hadn't changed entirely, but I had changed. I had become someone who could face injustice, someone who could make a difference, someone who could transform ordinary moments into acts of significance. Looking back now, I understand that the journey wasn't about recognition or praise, it was about awareness and action. The woman I greeted that morning, the CEO watching quietly, the countless lives touched by small gestures. They all taught me that the ordinary is never truly ordinary when we pay attention, when we choose to see and respond. And I realized that each of us has this power, this responsibility, whether we acknowledge it or not. As I sit here, reflecting on everything that happened, I ask myself one question, the one that has lingered since that first encounter. How many acts of kindness, how many moments of courage go unnoticed every day simply because no one sees them? And if we did notice, if we did act, how different could our world be? I don't have all the answers, and I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this: seeing, truly seeing, is the first step. Acting even when afraid is the next. And refusing to turn away, refusing to ignore, is where real change begins. Every day presents choices, and every choice matters. I can never go back to being unaware, and somehow, I hope I never want to. And as I place the folder down on my desk, feeling the weight and the importance of everything inside, I whisper to myself, quiet but determined, I see you. I will not look away, and I will keep going, no matter how hard it gets.